Hi and welcome to the 5th episode of Beat Orgy's trip through the 1980s. We're halfway through the series now, and tonight we're going to be doing a bit of a serious left turn into 1984. I'm Steve Cross, I'm with you for the next 2.5 hours, and we'll be playing a heap of material from that year over that time. We started off there with perhaps the most influential debut recording of that year from November 1984, Upside Down by the Jesus and Mary Chain, sounding a little like the Ramones playing under a horse blanket. That's Jesus and Mary Chain casting quite a shadow over the mid-1980s, and their record label creation, undoubtedly perhaps the hippest UK independent record label of the time. Let's hear from a couple of the Jesus and Mary Chain label mates, wall-to-wall fringes, I think, over the next couple of tracks. This is The Loft doing Why Does the Rain?
The music, the attitude, the phenomenon. Hear it on 3PBS 106.7 FM, Monday afternoons from 1:30 and Wednesday nights between 7:30 and 8:30 p.m.
Why does it always seem to fall on me? And why in the afternoon does that train, that same empty train run on time every single day? And why, when the thunderstorm is gone, blue grey air, ring like bells, ring like bells. And why does the rain, why does it always seem to fall on me? blue-gray hair. Ring like bells, ring like bells. And why did the rain, why did it always seem to pour on me? And why did the rain, why did it always seem to
couple of tracks there on Creation Records. We started off with The Loft doing Why Does the Rain, led by, of course, Peter Astor, who later went on to form the Weather Prophets, who perhaps never quite lived up to the promise of The Loft. And then playing in the background there, we've got Scottish band The Pastels doing what I think is one of the only genuine psychedelic classics of the 1980s, a track called Baby Honey, also on Creation. Older Scottish acts which were still around and influencing the general sound and vision of Creation. We're still putting out some pretty fine records back in '84. Here's one of them. This is Orange Juice.
Smiles my way, my eyes go out in perfect skin. Shame on you, got no sense of grace. Shame on me, just in case I might come to a conclusion other than that which is absolutely necessary, and that's perfect skin. Girl with the perfect skin says turn on the light, otherwise it can't be seen. She's got cheekbones like geometry and eyes like sin, and she's sexually enlightened by cosmopolitan eyes. When she smiles my way, my eyes go out in vain for her perfect skin. Yeah, that is perfect skin. To look at a slide, so I finally lied. Pretty weird at times at the age of 10. She looked like Greta Garbo and I loved her then. How was she to know that? When she smiles my way, my eyes go out in vain. She's got perfect skin. Up 8 flights of stairs to a basement flat, pretty confused, huh? Been shipped around like that, seems to climb so high. Now we're down so low, strikes me the moral of the song must be there never has been one.
Couple more Scottish bands there, starting off with Orange Juice from 1984 with What Presents, bit of a late period single for them. Very busy year late in their career, releasing a couple of albums that year. And also we heard from Lloyd Cole, New Boy on the Block out of Scotland, with a bit of Elvis Presley puppy fat thrown in for good measure as well. Starting off his career there with a Lou Reed obsession, Perfect Skin, and finishing off the decade living in New York and advertising yuppie liqueur. Other fully paid up pop stars from 1984 could easily be found on the dance floors.
Making difference what color you are. The only thing power respects is power. They take one little word out of what you say, ignore all the rest, then begin to magnify it all over the world to make you look like what you actually are.
Much of what I say might sound like it's stirring up trouble, but it's the truth. It's the truth. It's the truth. It's the truth. It's the truth.
And as long as those explosive ingredients remain, then you're going to have the potential for explosion on your hands. Malcolm X.
No sellout.
Malcolm X.
No sellout.
because all of us are sitting at the same table, are all of us diners? I'm not a diner until you let me dine. Then I become a diner. I was in a house last night that was bombed, my own. It isn't something that made me lose confidence in what I'm doing. Brothers and sisters, friends, and I see some enemies.
Surely one of the most influential hip-hop records of all time there, Keith LeBlanc with Malcolm X, No Sellout, sounding incredibly way ahead of the field back in 84, and probably a little tired with Tackhead in 89 in my opinion. And before that, a meeting of great minds on Chaka Khan's Feel For You, Chaka of course on vocals, Grandmaster Melly Mel doing the rap, harmonica by Stevie Wonder, and also of course the song written by Prince, a man who was having major success in 1984 with the film of the album of the jockstrap of Purple Rain. But we played a lot of Prince on this series so far, so I guess we'll give him a miss this week. And we started off with a couple of other dance floor tracks. We started off right at the beginning with Relax from Frankie, who surely need no introduction whatsoever. A bunch of degenerates from Liverpool who managed to get themselves banned on the BBC in Britain and therefore got a #1 single straight out of it. And a lesser known track, I guess, the Staple Singers, just going under the name of the Staples from back in 84 as well, doing a fine crossover record, a sort of pop gospel interpretation of the old Talking Heads song, Slippery People.
106.73 PBS.
Some pretty serious pop stars floating around as well in 84, clad in paisley, or would-be pop stars at least. They seem to be still harking back to the sound of the 60s guitar tones, 60s pop sensibilities, 60s hairdos were proliferating around the world. Let's take a quick spin around the globe and catch up on some of that sound.
I It's in fact a general misconception that the Long Riders are a Los Angeles band, as Sid Griffin hails from Kentucky, Stephen McCarthy from Richmond, Virginia, and bassist Tom Stevens from Indiana. I started by asking drummer Greg Souders how the band got together, and also to confirm that he was in fact the only Los Angelino in the band.
Yeah, I've lived there my whole life, my whole family. The other guys sort of moved out to the West Coast. Had either been unsatisfied with the bands they were playing in at home or just boredom or anything. They brought them out to California, to Los Angeles, and we all met up. And there's a lot of great music that came from Los Angeles over the years, which influenced us just by being there. But the nice thing is, when they moved out, they brought some of their influences from back home, some of the country and western stuff, or different pop or rock and roll that never really made it out to the West Coast as much. Well, when they came out, excuse me, and I met them, it gave new stuff to the Long Riders that I would never have heard. So it worked out really well, I think. That's the both worlds.
Nobody's crying, nobody's frightened. Still some hope inside. That was last night. Well, it seems I sound like the rest. We're trying hard not to be too depressed. Once they take everything I've left, it's so easy. So if you're dreaming, I hope that you do. Wish for the best and hope that it comes true. Who knows what you'll leave when you're through? I had a dream last night. Everybody's laughing and everything was alright. Still some hope inside. That was last night. I had a dream last night. Nobody's crying and nobody's fighting. Still some hope inside. That was last night.
The best thing in life is free, but you can give it to the birds and bees. I need some money.
You're listening to PBS for the best music in Melbourne. We've got everything that money can't buy, but we're not finished yet. We're a sandwich short of a picnic, a few screws loose. Our lift doesn't go all the way to the top. Phone 537-2433. Your cash or credit card can help us make it to the top before the dinosaurs of radio send us all on a bad trip. PBS is the hottest thing in town. It smokes, but it doesn't suck.
I need some money right away. I need some money so bad. I need some money.
There's horse on our shoulders, horse circle around. Ready to take out the back of the next and what more do we want?
Acclaimed New Zealand band Straitjacket Fits take over the PBS studios this Tuesday night to play their selection of records. Hits with the Fits between 8:30 and 9:30 this Tuesday evening, only on 3PBS FM.
On Friday the 4th of August, 3PBS FM presents 5 bands live at the Old Greek Theatre as part of the 10th anniversary Radiothon. Performing on the night will be Crashland, Chris Wilson's Crown of Thorns, Venom P Stinger, 4 Feet Deep and Shoot the Tsar. That's the 3PBS Radiothon benefit. Friday the 4th of August, the Old Greek Theatre, admission only $7 and $6.
Before that break we had 3 American bands with their roots firmly set in the 1960s. Started off with the Bangles with one of their early singles, Going Down to Liverpool, written by ex-member of the Soft Boys, Kimberly Rue, and one always has to wonder whether the Bangles really would have achieved such massive success if they'd stuck to their original name, which was the Bangs. I can't see them on MTV with that title, I'm afraid. And in the middle there we had the Smithereens, a New York band who had quite a bit of success later on in the decade. In fact, having a bit of success right now with a track off one of their early EPs called Beauty and Sadness, very much rooted in the Beatles' Revolver, I think. And we finished the whole thing off with the Long Riders, and a little word about the origins of that band out of the LA Paisley underground scene, and another band who didn't really live up to their original promise and managed to shake off those sort of 60s albatross they had around their neck. Of course, the 60s phenomena wasn't just big in America. Let's carry on with some other bands who took a little bit from the 1960s to their sound in 1984, starting in Britain with a band made up of members from all over the world. In fact, this is the Barracudas.
Another day, another place, another bed to rest my head. Everything connects and I turn around to see you instead. Don't walk away, don't even say you wanna keep me always. 'Cause you can't
The Hoodoo Gurus there from 1984 off their massively popular Stone Age Romeos album, Let's All Turn On, and before that a couple of other tracks with a slight 60s feel to them. Very subtle hint of psychedelia on the chill single Pink Frost from New Zealand, of course, on the Flying Nun label, and we started off with a band on the verge of breaking up and viewing themselves, quote, as a spent bullet on the belt of rock and roll. That was the Barracudas, made up of an American, a Canadian, and Australian. Spin around the guitar world and catch up on that from 84, starting this time in Australia with the Scientists.
We got love!
Well, there was certainly no shortage of bands to choose from for that sort of hard-edge guitar bracket we just played. We could have played the Lime Spiders, the New Christ, Wet Taxi, Screaming Tribesmen, the Droogs, the Liars, the Fuzztones, the Shoutless, stuff out of Britain. We could have played from the Surfing Lungs, the Prisoners, the Stingrays, the Milkshakes. Well, this was pretty much endless in 1984 for bands making that sort of racket. Instead, we started off with Australia's own Scientists doing We Had Love. We heard from a very obscure British band, but I still think it's a great single. It's a song called Pass Myself, Coming Back, and the band are called The Third Eye. That's all I know from them. And we just finished off there with a Swedish band called The Sinners doing Open Up Your Door, sort of cashing in or joining in with the Nomads and bands like Shoutless and the Stomach Mouths out of Sweden, making a very fine racket on their guitars back in '84. If you're wondering what's happening, if you've just joined us on this program, this is the fifth of a series of 10 programs, backtracking through the 1980s, trying to get some sort of musical map of the decade, and this show is focusing in on 1984. My name's Steve Cross, and I'm with you through until 11 o'clock. At least a couple of old folk who actually made a few classic records back in the 60s, which influenced many of the bands we've just been hearing from, managed to come up with some fine records in '84. Certainly the big comeback of the year after, it must be close to a decade of silence, was from this guy, John Fogerty.
You got the hidey high.
Perhaps the greatest self-proclaimed Martian ever to make records, Rocky Erickson. They're still managing to bring out an erratic series of fab records. Back in 1984, Starry Eyes, and starting off there with John Fogerty, Old Man Down the Road. After a 10-year silence, John Fogerty managing not only to bring out a record, but also getting sued by his old management company for writing songs that sounded like songs by John Fogerty. Strange business, the rock and roll world. 1984 also saw one classic reworking, perhaps of a 60s standard, really stands out, and principally because the song was dragged, mutating and screaming into the 1980s. Here's the bunch who did it, Husker Du.
You'll find that her story
Replacements there out of Minneapolis on the Twin Tone record label, and of course the band fronted by Paul Westerberg, who in 1984 was brave enough to admit that his favourite record of all time was A Nod's As Good As a Wink by the Faces. That's gall for you, I reckon. And of course that was off their album called Let It Be. That's gall for you as well, and a track called I Will Dare. And we started off with a couple of bands on the SST record label, very influential of course around that period. 8 Miles High by Husker Du, their big breakthrough single probably, and then the Meat Puppets off a undiscovered classic in my opinion, Meat Puppets 2, a track called We're Here. Those boys of course out of the desert, a pretty skew sound from Arizona. Some of the most refreshing music probably came out of another obscure area by rock standards, the boring old rock world, LA's Barrio, and of course we're talking about Los Lobos.
In a land where he once stood with pride, but he'll find his way by the morning light. Got a bad desire. Oh, Tell me now, baby, is it good to you? And can he do to you the things that I do? Oh, no. I can take you hard. Oh, I'm on fire. 6-inch belly through the middle of my skull. At night I wake up with the sheets soaking wet and a freight train running through the middle of my head. Will you cool my desire?
In 1984, the year that Bruce Springsteen was consumed by his own creation, The Boss, and of course having massive success with the Born in the USA album and tour, which steamrolled everything before it. Also, of course, we heard just from Los Lobos, busy year for them, 2 albums, A Time to Dance and How Will the Wolf Survive. Of course, we heard How Will the Wolf Survive, and the first Chicano band to cross over to a mainstream rock audience since probably in the early to mid-60s, opening the door for successful acts like the current band, the Gypsy Kings.
Quiet. Quiet. Quiet now, pigs. Quiet. Be quiet. Shut up. Announcing the 3PBS 10th Anniversary Radiothon Party at the Punters Club, 376 Brunswick Street, Fitzroy, starting at 12 noon and finishing late on Saturday, 5th of August.
But we're hungry.
Not to worry, my little piggies. The whole shindig kicks off with the Radiothon breakfast. And then at 1:30, comedy with your host, Tim Scully. 1:35 is Mutant Horn. 2 p.m. is The Men Who Knew Too Much. 2:30, Troy Beeston. 3 o'clock, Dr. Boyd. 3:40, Motor Jockeys. 4:30, The Chicken Hawks. 5:30, Empty Pockets. 6:30, Violet Summer. 7:45, Eden. 9 o'clock, Ape the Cry. 10:15, 7. 11:45, The Bow Weevil. So there you have it, a diverse blend of comedy, acoustic, poetry, ambient, funk and 60s. That's the 3PBS 10th Anniversary Radiothon Party at the Punters Club, Brunswick Street, Fitzroy, starting 12 noon and finishing very, very late.
This is just a little reminder of why you should subscribe in the PBS Radiothon.
You play a simple melody, like my mother sang to me. One with good old-fashioned harmony. Play a simple melody.
With every type of music, PBS caters for all the people you are. So, on the 4th, 5th and 6th of August, remember, subscribe to PBS, the final refuge from the FM stereotype.
In 1984, R.E.M. were consolidating their success of their debut album with a follow-up album. The follow-up album, of course, was Reckoning. We're going to have a track from that right now, but before that, here's Michael Stipe to tell you how to avoid talking to people you don't want to talk to at parties.
Years and years ago in Athens, I would go to these parties all the time, and sometimes the conversation would just get really banal and horrible. And so I used to faint, you know. And Peter was hip to it. This is, you know, a long time ago. Peter would be hip to it, and so he would know that if I suddenly collapsed in the middle of a party, that he could like rush over and kind of drag me out, and that would get me out of having to talk to these people or whatever. Just
bet you all thought I'd forget that fake fade out there. That's Let's Active, fronted by R.E.M's original producer, Mitch Easter, doing a track called Ring True off their Cypress album. Of course, Mitch Easter contributing a hell of a lot to R.E.M's original sound. And before that, we heard from R.E.M's second album, Reckoning, and from Michael Stipe. He's just such a sensitive boy, isn't he? Doing Seven Chinese Brothers. We've already heard from influential and distinctive UK and US independent labels on the show so far. Maybe we should check out another highly acclaimed independent label who brought out some fine records in 1984. Talking about the New Zealand label Flying Nun. Start off with the band called the Double Happies, who were fronted by Shane Carter, who's now with Straight Jacket Fitz, who'll be back in town around about early in August in order to play their second tour of Australia. Fine stuff this. This is their sort of theme tune, the Double Happies. It's called Needles and Plastic.
Jack. Too many worries about what you should be now. Throw you back in the world, people don't know you now. They got other ideas.
Three New Zealand bands there on the Flying Nun record label from 1984. The last couple, of course, were spin-offs from the great New Zealand band who we were lucky enough to see reformed in town recently, The Clean. The last band we just heard was, of course, the Bats, fronted by Bob Scott, doing I Go Wild off the Bats by Night EP. We also heard in the middle the Great Unwashed with David and Hamish Kilgore doing Where You Should Be Now, pretty much out of their brains on that record by the sound of it. And we started off with Shane Carter fronting the Double Happies, doing Needles and Plastic from their EP that came out in 1984. And don't forget, Shane Carter in town this very week, or this coming week, with the Straight Jacket Fits. And if you like that band, make sure you tune into PBS between 8:30 and 9:30 this coming Tuesday night, when it's Tuesday the 1st of August, I believe, when Shane and other members of Straight Jacket Fits will be in the studio playing an hour's worth of their own selection of music. So should be good stuff. There's certainly guys who know their way around the record shop, so there should be some good music on that. Straight Jacket Fits on PBS, 8:30 to 9:30, Tuesday the 1st of August, and of course playing in town.
Progressive Radio 106.73 PBS FM.
Getting pretty close to the end of the show now, not too long to go. If you just tuned in, this is the 5th of a series of 10 programs running through the 1980s. Year by year, we're looking at the music of 1984, and of course in 1984, a lot of the bigger Australian bands were already overseas, mainly based in the UK, making extremely confident records. And in 1984, they were joined by yet another one of the many bands, of course the Triffids.
From me as the snow flies. On a cold and gray Chicago morn, a poor little baby child was born. And his mama cried. Cause there's one thing that she don't need, is another little hungry mouth to feed in the ghetto. People, don't you understand? This child needs a helping hand. He's gonna grow to be an angry young man someday. Oh, take a look at you and me. Are we that blind to see? Do we simply turn our heads and look the other way? And the world turns, and the hungry little boy with the runny nose plays in the streets as the cold wind blows. And his hunger burns. So he starts to roam the streets at night, and he learns how to steal, and he learns how to fight. Then one night in desperation, the young man breaks away. He buys a gun and steals a car. He tries to run, but he don't get far. And his mama cried. A crowd gathers round an angry young man face down on the street with a gun in his hand. I get oh, people, don't you understand? Oh, this child needs a helping hand. He's gonna grow to be an angry young man someday. Hey, take a look at you and me. Are we that blind to see? Do we simply turn our heads and look the other way? And as the young man died on a cold and gray Chicago morn, another little baby child was born in the ghetto. In the ghetto.
Sailing on empty sea, and the light that is in the darkness, it don't shine on me. I'm like an old man, I run to find the shore, and the light that was in your eye, but it doesn't shine anymore. So wait until tomorrow, and on there we'll see. You know I don't know about tomorrow. But and I feel like you know I must be hypnotized. So wait until tomorrow, and darling, then we'll see. You know I don't know about tomorrow.
By 1984, the Australian music scene was getting a lot of press coverage overseas, and not surprising considering how confident those records are we just played. That's just a hint of them as well. We had Red Pony from the Triffids on the Treeless Plain. The Triffids leaving for Britain in 1984 for the first time. We had an incredibly slick go-betweens track, Bachelor Kisses. We heard Nick Cave starting his solo career after the demise of the Birthday Party and commencing his fascination with Elvis Presley with In the Ghetto. And we also had the debut single, probably the great debut single for Australian band in 1984, going on in the background there, Died Pretty Out of the Unknown on Citadel Records, produced by Rob Younger. And if you want to hear some more Australian music from 1984, don't forget to catch Craig Camber's show from the Echo Chamber. That's tomorrow night between 6 and 7:30, or tomorrow evening, probably more accurate, where Craig, in a great feat of radio programming coordination, will be playing Australian releases from 1984. A lot of fine stuff, so check that out tomorrow night, 6 to 7:30. About time to wrap this show up. My thanks to Harvey Saywood and Mick Geyer for their assistance in getting the show into some presentable sort of order. And my thanks to you for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, don't forget these programs are going out on a monthly basis. So we'll be looking at 1985, the same time slot, but at the end of this coming month, at the end of August, last Thursday of August, 8:30 to 11 o'clock, 1985 will be covered. And in the more immediate future, I'll be back on air tomorrow from 2 o'clock till 4:30 in the afternoon. One last track before we go from 1984, a track from a band who made a pretty major crossover from an independent label to being a pretty heavy-duty mainstream success. Changed a lot of kids' sexuality in the process, or perhaps it was just their haircuts, I'm not sure. You may call this self-pitying, some other people call it angst, some people call it the stairway to heaven of the 1980s. I call it a pretty cool guitar noise. So this is Steve Cross bowing out for the show this month with a track from the Smiths, How Soon Is Now.
I'm the sun and the air, of a shyness that is criminally vulgar. I'm somewhere, nothing in particular. You should you know, how can you say I go about things the wrong way? I am human and I need to belong, just like everybody else I am the sun and the air, of a shyness that is criminally vulgar. I am the sun and air, nothing in particular. You should know, how can you say I go about things the wrong way? I am human and I need to belong, just like everybody else does.
Who the f*** do you think you are, sitting in your lounge room with your colour TV and your remote control music centre? Why don't you off your great fat and do something useful for a change? You useless pile of dog. You make
If
me
you've
want to
been
puke
listening to
every time I
any of the
think
many and varied punk, thrash or metal shows, and you haven't actually been a paid-up subscriber, then you've been a very naughty girls and boys. I think you really should do the right thing and call 537-2433 and subscribe, and I'm sure you'll feel much, much better.
Do the right thing. Subscribe now to PBS and enjoy free radio.
I'm sure you'll feel much, much better.